This has got to be a joke! Why is this here? My favorite houseplant was placed next to the TV. Hidden between the leaves was unmistakably a surveillance camera. Even though it's small, they would be able to clearly see what's happening here. I was deeply terrified to realize that such a thing had been set up without my knowledge. I quickly told my husband, who looked surprised for a moment before falling into thought. Then he gave me a sly smile and said, "Well, then it's our turn to strike back." As a result of his countermeasure, an unexpected person was revealed. My name is Stephanie Bonvalot, 27 years old, and I'm a regular employee at a pharmaceutical company. My company is fairly well known in the industry and is a recognized large-scale company. They treat their employees well, and the benefits are incomparably solid compared to others. Of course, the job isn't easy, and I do work overtime during busy periods. But thanks to this, I'm able to live comfortably. Another reason I can lead such a life is my husband, Jackson. We got married a year ago. He's a certified clinical laboratory technician and works at a hospital. We originally met when I went to the hospital to sell medicine. I never thought we would become a married couple when we first met, but now, thanks to him, we're leading a happy married life. When I got home from work that day, I could smell a pleasant smell from the back of the room. When I opened the door to the living room, there was my husband, wearing my apron and cooking dinner. "Oh, hi, babe. Welcome back." "I'm home." "Wait, isn't that my apron?" "I couldn't find mine, so I borrowed it. Dinner will be ready soon." "Aw, thank you. You must be tired too, honey." "Not at all. It's just a quick stew, and let's make spaghetti with the leftover stew tomorrow." "Sounds good. I think I can get home a little earlier tomorrow, so I'll pick up some spaghetti on the way back." While both of us are busy, thanks to his support, I can live each day without pushing myself too hard. I can only be grateful to him for willingly taking the lead in household chores without a word of complaint. To an outsider, my married life might seem perfectly smooth. However, there was one issue that bothered me. It was my mother-in-law, Cynthia. She dotes on her only son, Jackson, and has apparently spoiled him to an extreme extent. According to my husband, she has never scolded him. Moreover, if he had a fight with a friend or brought a girlfriend home, Cynthia would be furious. She would not only confront the people involved, but she would also badmouth and drive away any girlfriends she deemed unsuitable for her son. As a result, his social relationships weren't great, and he even contemplated running away from home when he was in middle school. After that, he studied hard in high school and entered a challenging national university in a rural area. He joined the medical department to become a laboratory technician, but the main reason seemed to be that he wanted to get away from his mother. That being said, since I was marrying him, I had to meet my in-laws. But at that time, I hadn't yet realized how strong Cynthia's attachment to her son was. The first time I witnessed it was when I visited her house to meet her and her husband. Contrary to the welcoming father-in-law Travis, Cynthia gave me a sharp, piercing look. Nice to meet you." She let out a big sigh upon hearing me speak. She then whispered to me, so as not to be heard by the joyous reunion of Jackson and his father. "Do you really think you can marry my son? He's highly educated and has a very good income. Yet, he's marrying someone ordinary like you, which is absolutely unacceptable. You must have coaxed him." I didn't do anything like that." "We'll see about that. I've heard that young women these days pretend to be pure-hearted, but are actually cunning. I'm not like that. I just love him. I intended to clearly convey my feelings for her son, but apparently, saying that I loved him was a taboo phrase for her. As soon as I said it, she had a different look in her eyes and confronted me. Then, in a voice much lower than one would expect from her beautiful face, she said, "Stop it. You're just trying to get money from my son." I'm not thinking about that at all. I'll make sure to tell him. It's not that you love him, but you love his money, and that's why you're marrying him. Please stop. Overwhelmed by fear, I started crying. Jackson, who couldn't bear to see me cry, rushed over and glared at his mother. Hey, what did you say to her, Mom? I didn't say anything. I just told her to be happy if she's getting married. Then why is she crying? Maybe she's happy? To be told such a thing by me, the mother of the man she loves. Is that true, Stephanie? When he asked me, I was at a loss for words. But I shouldn't provoke Cynthia any further. Reluctantly, I nodded slowly. Yes, I'm sorry for suddenly bursting into tears. Are you really okay? Yeah, I'm fine, thank you. If you say so. He looked worried, but there was no way I could tell him the truth. No matter how badly he thinks of his mother, as an outsider, I can't criticize my mother-in-law. Besides, I wanted to settle this as peacefully as possible. If I don't tell him about it here, she won't harass me any further. I had convinced myself of that. Our house and my in-laws' house are about a 30-minute drive apart. At the beginning of our marriage, Cynthia suggested that we live with them, but Jackson firmly refused. We would have preferred to live even farther away from his parents' house, but considering the commute to work, any greater distance would be inconvenient. Well, we should be okay if we're this far apart. But this was just the beginning. I suppose it's because we ignored her warnings and got married anyway. Cynthia started visiting our house on a regular basis. Weekdays, weekends, it didn't matter. Whenever she felt like it, she would come over and use the spare key under the doormat to let herself in. No matter how many times we talked to her, she didn't stop, which even Jackson was furious about. When we stopped leaving a spare key under the doormat, she started to make a scene in front of our house. Open up! I know you're in there! Why won't you let me in when your family is here? Her shouting echoed, and people from the neighborhood started to peek out. We were worried that if this continued, someone might call the police. So we always ended up opening the front door. Moreover, recently, for some reason, she started coming over when I was alone. Just the other day, she came over when Jackson happened to be away on a business trip. She rang the doorbell repeatedly, and reluctantly, I opened the front door, only for her to yell at me with a puzzled expression. Hey, how long are you gonna keep me waiting? I'm sorry, I was just vacuuming. I don't want to hear any excuses. Let me in right now. Yes, come on in. Pushing past me, she stomped into the house. Once inside, she sighed heavily and wore an annoyed expression. Hey, I told you last time too, didn't I? If you're gonna work, at least make sure you do the chores properly. Yes, so I've been doing my best not to skimp on housework, as you said. What are you talking about? Look over there. There's hair on the floor. What? When I stared at the floor, sure enough, there was a piece of gray hair. But no matter how I looked at it, it was obviously hers. Even though it was her hair, she acted as if my cleaning wasn't up to par. I was astounded by this. The stupid hair, isn't that yours? Why do I have to put up with such false accusations? Without considering my feelings, she seated herself on the sofa and began to relax, operating the latest TV and household appliances as if she was familiar with them. In this space, without Jackson, all I could do was endure. Then one day, I had come home from work earlier than my husband and started cleaning a bit before preparing dinner. I didn't have much time, so I quickly cleaned parts that I usually don't pay much attention to, like the TV stand. That's when I saw it. This has got to be a joke! Why is this here? My favorite houseplant was placed next to the TV. Hidden between the leaves was unmistakably a surveillance camera. I tried to calm my pounding heart. Why is there a surveillance camera in our house? Even though it's small, they would be able to clearly see what's happening here. I quickly took out my smartphone and Googled the installed camera. The small camera seemed to be a cheap one. The camera apparently didn't have a recording function. It required a specific app to be installed on a smartphone and would only work when the app was open. It was designed so that a light on the side of the camera would blink while the app was active. I quickly checked, and the light wasn't blinking at the moment. This means that whoever had installed the camera didn't know I had discovered it yet. When Jackson came home, he was taken aback to find me sitting at the entrance. "What's going on, honey? Why are you sitting here?" "It's bad. You need to know something." "What? What is it?" "There's a surveillance camera installed in our living room." "Seriously?" He slowly nodded, and then he seemed to be deep in thought. Eventually, he quietly asked, "Do you have anyone in mind?" "Well, I thought so. There's only one person I can think of. It's my mom, isn't it?" His words made me flustered, because I had also suspected that Cynthia was the one who had installed the camera. Unless someone picked the lock, they couldn't get into the house. The only person other than us who frequently comes in and out of this house is her. She must have installed the camera while I was briefly away. That's why she only comes when Jackson is not here. And that's how she knew how to operate the brand new electronics we had just bought. She must have been spying on our daily life. There's no other explanation. At that moment, an indescribable disgust welled up inside me. The idea of being watched in my daily life was unbearably creepy. This is going too far, even if she didn't like me. No matter how much she dotes on her son, this is unforgivable. Tears welled up in my eyes out of frustration. My husband gently hugged me and whispered, "I'm sorry." It was right after that. He smiled cunningly. A somewhat mischievous smile appeared on his face. "All right. Well, then it's our turn to strike back." "Strike back? But how?" "If the surveillance camera doesn't work properly, she'll get anxious and come to fix it, right? We'll get her then." "But she always comes when I'm alone." "That's why we need to make it look like you're alone." I didn't understand what he meant, and when I asked him, he confidently replied, "I'll pretend to go out, right in front of the camera." Ah, I see. Once we decided on this, we checked to see if the camera was on and proceeded to execute our plan. We left the camera on and talked about his fake business trip. The next day, we pretended to accidentally drop the potted plant containing the camera onto the floor and threw it in the trash. If our guess was correct, Cynthia would definitely come this weekend, believing the fake business trip we had created. Several days later, while I was in the living room, the doorbell rang. I asked Jackson to wait in the bedroom and hurried to the front door. As expected, Cynthia was at the door when I opened it. I tried to act as normal as possible to not let her notice my unease and invited her into the house. As soon as she entered the living room, she said, "Hurry up and give me some coffee." And she shooed me into the kitchen. The kitchen is in the same room as the living room, but it is set back a bit, so I couldn't see what was happening in the living room. I said all right and headed to the kitchen, then immediately sent a message to Jackson. At that moment, he emerged from the bedroom and peeked into the living room. I also pretended to make coffee while discreetly keeping an eye on Cynthia in the living room. She looked around nervously, searching for the potted plant. Then she pulled out the same camera from her pocket and set it up so that it was hidden in the shadow of the pot. "Let's get her now!" Just as I jumped out, the door to the living room was flung open. A red-faced Jackson yelled at Cynthia, "What the hell are you doing, Mom?" "Jackson? Why are you here? Aren't you supposed to be on your business trip from today?" "So it was you. The business trip was a lie. It was a trap to lure out the person who installed this camera." You knew?" "Of course. The only one who would do something this outrageous is you." "Outrageous?" She widened her eyes and began to tremble. The embarrassment of being caught by her son must have been too much. She glared at me and approached with an intense fury. "It's all your fault. You took my son away from me." "Took him away? All I wanted was to live happily with the man I love. I never thought of it as taking him." "Shut up! I don't give a shit about your feelings. He's disappointed and disgusted with me because of you." "But that's because of your actions, not mine. Don't blame me." You good for nothing." As she raised her hand with a red face, Jackson grabbed it and forcefully threw it off. "What are you doing?" He coldly replied to her scream. "Mom, no, I can't even call you my mom anymore. Enough is enough. If you lay a hand on my precious wife, be prepared for the consequences." "What are you saying?" "I've been patient so far, but I've reached my limit. I'm embarrassed to have a mother as outrageous as you. I no longer consider you my mother anymore." At his words, Cynthia's eyes widened in shock. He continued mercilessly towards her, who likely didn't understand the situation. "There's no way I can consider a lowlife like you as my mother. How can you hurt the person your son chose and be okay with it? I will never forgive you. And I will never acknowledge you as my mother, no matter what." Wait! Please wait, Jackson. "Get out! Leave this house right now, and never show your face again." At his words, she began to tremble. Eventually, she fled the house, seemingly on the brink of tears. Afterward, he told the whole event to his father, Travis. Travis seemed to have been completely unaware, even thinking that Cynthia and I were getting along well. Upon learning everything, Travis was furious. "I didn't think she was such a terrible person," he said, and served her with divorce papers. They're currently in the process of divorce. Cynthia was kicked out of the house and is now living with Jackson's brother and his wife at their home. However, due to the reasons behind her situation, she seems to be treated like a housemaid and is oppressed by the couple. But I feel no sympathy for her. All of this is a result of her own actions. On the other hand, I've been able to live more freely since Cynthia stopped visiting. My relationship with Jackson is good, and every day is very happy. With the stress of my mother-in-law gone, we were able to get pregnant. I want to continue to build a happy home with my husband and our forthcoming child.